Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Cerberus. I am Payman Ascari. I am joined by my two co-hosts, Mr. Timothy Knight and Andre Meloche. And this week, we are extremely fortunate to have Miss Kathy Drake with us. Miss Drake, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Thanks so much for having me.
No, we're very excited. We know what's going on. You're extremely busy, and we're very thankful that you made the time to come here. So on behalf of my two co-hosts, thanks again. I just, before we get started with your story, I have to do this every week. For people that are watching right now, if you could please like, share, and subscribe, and also restream the live stream, it would help us get the message out. We really want to get Ms. Drake's story out today. And if you have any questions, put them in the comments. We'll try to get to them before the end of the episode. Ms. Drake, I was just wondering if you could, for just briefly for the audience, explain what has happened to you with this situation.
Right. So I'm being sued for expressing a political opinion. And this is a very dangerous and important case because it's a precedent-setting case. And so if anyone's interested in the details of that, they can go to my X account, and the pinned post has a fundraiser. And in that fundraiser, you will find the statement of claim, the statement of defense, and an overview of all that. But essentially, it's a free speech case.
Okay, so I get that it's a free speech case. What is the what's the impact? Like, what will be the significance of this? Or I guess another way of asking is why should people be taking this seriously? Like, what would happen if this becomes precedent?
It will mean that certain words could possibly be removed from the lexicon, as well as compelled speech. So pronoun usage. So, if you're compelled to use pronouns that don't align with biological reality or are nonsensical, such as they, them pronouns, non-binary is nonsense. As far as I'm concerned, you should be allowed to have that opinion if you want to. And then in my case, it's the word groomer. And so the word groomer being removed from the lexicon in regards to trans ideology grooming, keeping secrets with minors from parents, such as name changes and pronoun changes, socially transitioning the child. That's very, very dangerous. And I think that the word grooming is a good word. Groomers, for people that promote that or are involved with that, I think is a good descriptive term. And that's my opinion, and I should have a right to that. And anyone who thinks that I shouldn't, and that they would like to silence me, they are possibly setting themselves up in the future to be silenced themselves. In a totalitarian society, free speech is what goes first. And so if you are taking away someone else's free speech, you're laying the ground for your own free speech to be infringed upon in the future, potentially as well.
I guess I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Knight, but your situation, it really shook me. Like, it has a chilling effect, because if I see that they're coming after you and they can punish you financially and put you into severe debt, I'm going to be like, I'm not going to say what's on my mind anymore. Like, this is really, really scary, and I don't know if people see it or not. But I'll let you respond, but I'll hand you over to Mr. Knight.
So what I see here are three quick things. And one is, this is an application of George Orwell's dictionary revisionism displayed in the book 1984, where those who were on the dictionary team or committee bragged about how the dictionary is getting smaller and smaller and smaller every year. So you're referring to literally removing language from our culture. And this is that effect. The second thing you point out is they are inadvertently setting themselves up for abuses themselves by some future agent or agencies. The natural effect of that is the Hegelian dialect in Marxism, which is endless revolution. These individuals see themselves as revolutionaries. One day, when the counter revolutionary steps in, the revolutionaries will be the first ones lined up against the wall. And this is a historical fact. So you are correct. They are inadvertently hastening a further collapse, even of their own ideology, to a worse or a bigger, more dangerous monster down the road. And the third is the element of self-censorship. That and the conservative-minded individual is almost always guilty of some degree of self-censorship because we are being mindful for the traditional structure. Right? Maybe I am being a little bit tough. Maybe I should be a little more, open to listening to others. So we hold back on our own. So this is part of having discussion and dialogue. So we pull back a little bit and we choose, well, maybe I'm not going to use that language because I know it's a little bit provocative. And that tends to be our nature, right, by nature. But there are moments when we must be clear. We must be definitive. We must draw the line. And historically, the law permits us to do that. Like you said, this is public speech, right? This is a political speech, and that is protected in Canadian law, even though Canada does not have a First Amendment, because under the Crown, you should be able to approach the King and say what you need to say. But our culture has come to a place where people who are easily wounded have now been given positions of authority. And they use those positions of authority to curtail any future abuses against their, perceived abuses against their person. So then when someone like yourself steps up and says, that's grooming, that's what that is. You're not a they, them. You're not a Z or a zit. You're a he or a him. This is grooming. You do not do this to children. You don't do this to people, and then brag about it, and then bully those who have a different viewpoint. So they have to come after you. They
Right.
have to
So
do.
in my case, the woman was raising money publicly for Stepping Stone. Stepping Stone is one of two lobby groups that gained the injunction against bills 26, 27, and 29. So it's highly politicized speech. And one of the main criticisms is that I was quite rude and I used insult. And free speech is the right to offend. And with that, as far as tone policing goes, tone policing also erodes free speech. I feel like in Canada, we are kind of in a cult of politeness. And why should someone have all of their free speech taken away because they use an insult? One of the questions I like to ask is that if you think that people are involved in crimes against humanity, which I think that transing children, I think we need Nuremberg-style trials, and I think that they're crimes against humanity, how polite should you be? If you were to confront a Nazi who's guarding a concentration camp, how polite would you be? At a certain point, there's going to be distress expressed, right? So yeah, that's my rudeness was coming from a place of distress. And I made the post out of duty, a sense of duty. So as far as saying, oh, well, you went too far when you said that, I don't think that we should erode people's free speech when it comes to insult. With Canada being, in a cult of politeness as well, and tone policing and curtailing people's free speech around how rude or sensitive they should be, or those sorts of things, we have this elbows up isolationism happening. And I think that one of the reasons why my case and other cases like it are in the stages of lawfare, as opposed to, I mean, we see Bill C9 coming down the pipe as well, and all of this, real hard legal overt censorship. The reason why this censorship is in the stage of lawfare, as opposed to us already being like the UK, is because of our proximity to the USA, I think, and their First Amendment and their culture, and how brash they are and how rude they are. And I love it. I love going to the USA. you talk to Americans, I've talked to Americans in X spaces about my case, and they're like, are you serious? Like, this is crazy. This wouldn't fly in the USA. So for us to have this cultural isolationism and see it as patriotism seems to be another way to isolate us from the culture of freedom that the USA is the bastion of. So that's one of the thoughts that I've been exploring.
Are you done, Tim, or do you have any follow-up questions?
No, go ahead, Andre. Sorry. Yeah,
Well,
when I mute my mic, it's the next guy's turn. Sorry.
it's interesting in what you mentioned, Tim, and I will refer to, even if it's a quote that is attributed to Voltaire, even if he's not the author of the quote. Seems that Voltaire was saying, "I do not necessarily agree with what you're saying, but I will defend your freedom of expressing it, even if many people, many historians, they say it's not Voltaire who wrote that." I think it goes along with what you said, Kathy, about what we can express and what we cannot express. You mentioned the United States. I think you're right. They have a big, huge influence. And because I'm from Quebec, I'm starting to see some differences between English Canadian and French Canadian. Us in Quebec, we're not politically correct. This concept is maybe 30, 40 years old. And Canadian are always painted like being polite, British, the British flag, how they can behave. And we see the difference. How do you perceive what would be freedom of expression? Because you mentioned many things, the Nuremberg trial, or the gender ideology. I'm a writer. If somebody tries to censor or to suppress my speech, like what we saw, not only with Orwell, but with Fahrenheit 451 and Ray Bradbury, writers, they see 30, 40, 50 years in advance what could happen, the long-term tendency. Do you see something that could happen here, especially around what is happening to you? How do you see it, let's say, middle term, long term, 5 years, 10 years from now?
Well, I'd like to remain optimistic, because even if everything goes to shit, at least I'll have more fun along the way. So I would like to see, you know, a restoring of academic institutions, a removal of ideological culture, the way that Trump went in and he's starting to clean house. No more DEI, which is authoritarian, newspeak, all those sorts of things. I'd like to see a return to sanity. And that's my hope, is that, and even with my case, that people have already shown so much support, and that people will continue to show support and not allow me to be crushed in this war of attrition. Because this case goes beyond just me as an individual. This will have impacts that are wider reaching, and will chill people's speech through the threat of litigation, with a precedent being set that you won't be able to defend yourself if you use the forbidden word, right? So this is very important. And Voltaire, whether he wrote it or not, or whether it's really his quote, I don't agree with a word you have to say, but I shall fight to the death for your right to say it.
Exactly.
And that is so important, because if we truly believe in free speech, we have to fight for the opinions of those we disagree with the most, right? Everyone's a free speech absolutist until it's someone they disagree with, is what I've seen. I adore Elon Musk, okay, but even I saw him recently saying that the word fascist, if someone uses the word fascist, it should be seen as a incitement of violence, right? So creating another forbidden word. People should be able to have an opinion and say, I think that person's a fascist, whether they're wrong or right? So whether they're telling the truth or lying, it should be up to ourselves to discern that. There shouldn't be some arbitrator of truth, a ministry of truth.
Do you think, I will have a follow-up question, do you think that through censorship, We need common language, English, French in Canada. We need common language. When we have definition of words, we have to be able to agree on a common definition, so we will not try to fight. I refer to, for example, the etymology of words. Do you think that it is possible today, considering what is happening? We see what is happening with the agenda you mentioned, gender ideology, and the government. All governments in Canada are always leaning toward more censorship, toward reality. I'm sorry to say it, but you can say whatever you want, that you say that you're a woman, that you're a man, that the man can become pregnant. In reality, facts are there, and they are hard facts. Do you think it is possible to bring back the society, the actual Canadian society, in line with facts?
Interesting. Because my first instinct is to say, no, we should not force specific definitions of words. You know, for example, the word groomer, I'm using it in a broad sense that has nothing to do with pedophilia. It has to do with trans ideology and, you know, having children get into the medical scandal of being on puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones and surgeries and that sort of thing, and being lifelong medical patients. So grooming, for example, can have a broader definition. I think we're being groomed as a society. However, when it comes to the definition of woman in a legal sense, right? Should that have a strong, sturdy definition to ensure that the term woman means adult human female and can ensure that we have sex-based rights? So I haven't fully landed on that.
Because
Right?
I will just small observation. When we talk about puberty blocker or gender surgery, I'm sorry, those people will never have children. So, in my opinion, and I will refer to the diagnosis and statistic of mental disorder from the American Psychiatric Association, this is sterilization. It is written black and white in the document. I'm not inventing it. Everybody can find the DSM-5. I always refer to it. So it's a group of psychiatrists and psychologists that are studying what we call gender dysphoria. So if you suppress the word sterilization, you will have to suppress the document in the United States. And I'm not sure that the American Psychiatric Association will appreciate what we can do in Canada. I do agree with what you said. I think they will have a great influence in Canada, especially on matter like vocabulary. So that's
Right. And we
only
have to be
a small
careful
observation.
with saying that everyone will be sterilized or, you know, that sort of thing, because some people won't, right? There's always exceptions. But yes, sterilization is obviously a big risk factor. Sexual function is a big risk factor. And often people are not able to truly be able to consent. You know, I haven't landed on, you know, right now, my focus is protecting the children, right? But I've heard the argument, should people be able to consent to amputating healthy body parts? Should people be able to consent to amputating limbs? Should people be able to consent to the lobotomy? Should people be able to consent to trepanning, where they drill a hole in your head? They used to think that it would relieve headaches, and there's still people that are trying to gain access to that procedure for some reason. We have to ensure that we're upholding the Hippocratic Oath. But for now, my focus is just protecting the children primarily.
Good. Payment.
All right. Let's lighten the mood. A couple of mentions. Clown World, thank you very much for reposting the stream. Same thing with Squirrel Nuts. Thanks for reposting the stream twice. And Kirk Reese, thank you for reposting the stream. If you guys could repost it, we really want to get this message out to as many people as possible. Granddaddy says good evening, and he says you did nothing wrong. So I agree with you, Granddaddy. So some words of encouragement. Miss Drake, I I'm trying to wrap my head around what's going on with your case. And when it comes to censorship, there's different ways the government can censor us. They can do it through legislation or the government. You can't you can't draw a swastika. So that's like what they're doing with C8, C9. You can do it through the courts, through the criminal system. I don't know, Holocaust denial is a crime, for example. But then there's also now what's happening here, it's through civil court. I'm trying to understand, like, how does this, can you tell us how this works and how is this different from the other ones, or is there no difference?
Civil means that I could have a financial penalty for my speech. So it's a form of persecution.
Right, but I mean, this could happen to anyone, is what I'm saying, right? Like, if it's criminal code, as long as I don't punch Mr. Knight in the face, it's not going to happen to me. But if they pass this and it becomes a precedent, A, it could apply to everyone, and B, what are they going to introduce a new precedent tomorrow? Like, if you wink at someone in a mischievous manner, you're gonna get hit with a financial penalty. Is this what could happen?
It's a huge slippery slope. It means that lawyers who are possibly misusing the legal system would be more emboldened to do so and continue to try and punish people through litigation and suing them with huge financial burdens in order to get their political agenda the way that they want it to be.
So my two co-hosts here, they're learned gentlemen. Mr. Knight is a historian. Mr. Milosh, he's a philosopher. I'm just an ordinary guy, and I'm like,
quote unquote philosopher.
well, whatever, writer, philosopher. I'm trying to understand. The lawyers are hijacking our system of legislation. Like, we're supposed to elect people to go write the laws, but the lawyer is essentially writing the law, is he not? He or she?
Well, it's called case law. It's a type of law. So case law, right? Every time there's some sort of civil case, the outcome creates case law. And this is a new frontier. My case in particular is, the first that I'm aware of in Alberta. And so this would be new ground, conquering new ground for the trans lobby activists who possibly back up the opposition lawyer.
So one final question, and if you don't want to answer this, that's fine. You could always say go over there and get that. What's the underlying law that they are interpreting that's going to be, you mentioned, pushing the frontier? Is it simply that is it Bill C-16? What is it? Do you know?
I'm not entirely sure. Bill C-16, I'm sure, would have something to do with it. But it's defamation. So if he can win this case saying that using the word groomer is defamation, then he can remove the word from the lexicon from other people being able to use it in regards to transgender ideology, grooming, right? So that's where, so it's not like a hard law. It's not like, here's a new bill that says this word is no longer allowed in the dictionary. You're not allowed to use it within this context, right? You're not allowed to say you're grooming your dog anymore or whatever. It's basically anything that has to do with a historically marginalized group of the LGBTQAI plus 2S group, which a lot of people argue should be separated into the identities and the orientations LGB, right? And that these other identities hijacked a legitimate movement to try and make themselves legitimized. That anything associated with that, if you use the word groomer, then it's seen as defamation and harassment, when I'm not using the word groomer because someone identifies like that. You could be a perfectly straight person and, have nothing to do with, but it includes allies, right? That community, it's not a real community, includes allies. But if I use the word groomer associated with someone part of this historically marginalized group to describe what I think of as grooming, do they get to then act with impunity because they say that they're one of these identities? Right. So this is a big powder keg case around this issue of children and the transgender ideology cult. And so that's why I feel like I'm being targeted for this, because this would be a huge win for the other side, because it means that everybody, when Danielle Smith had the notwithstanding clause and people, use the word groomer, every single one of those people that made a comment in a post or anything like that would be able to be sued, essentially, and say that they're engaged in defamation.
Thank you. That was actually really good. That was the answer I was looking for. Thank you very much. Tim, I'll hand it off to you.
I'm now interested in talking about defamation a little more. I can't accuse you of defamation if the accusation itself doesn't imply I've done something bad. Right? The defamation that I am a charlatan, there's a certain assumption that me charging you with defamation, taking you to court, saying you're accusing me of, I'm admitting grooming is a bad thing. By accusing you of a false accusation, right? That's the claim. You're making a false accusation that I am a groomer, and I, as the claimant, these other people, this group, are saying we recognize that grooming is a bad thing. We are not grooming. And so then the onus, and by rights, in a court of law, the onus would be on them to prove that they are not grooming, and equally on you to prove that they are. But because the court is not prepared to have that conversation, it's moved into the civic theater. And to repress you and to lay a threat on anyone who might try to do the same as you and speak freely, they lay a very heavy financial burden. So this is about language.
Mia Hughes has stated very clearly, and I have this in the comment under my pinned post, that telling children that they could be born in the wrong body is grooming. She says absolutely yes, right? So being involved with that, defamation is something. I just watched a dramatized documentary, so I'm not sure how historically accurate this is. I think they had to get their history right. It was on Sophie Scholl. I've been trying to do as much research as I can on Sophie Scholl, and from this Sophie Scholl movie, it was said that she was charged with defamation of the Nazi Party and as well as treason. So she was handing out leaflets at a university, and she was caught, and these leaflets were basically speaking out against the war because she was sick of seeing her friends being sent to the meat grinder and this war continuing on and on. So she was charged with and convicted of defamation against the Nazi Party. So a lot of these words, harassment, defamation, are being weaponized by people who have a political agenda.
Yeah. So what we're also finding, you mentioned woman as an actual legal term, right? So you take that word into court, it has a very specific, well-defined, understood meaning that a judge will use contextually to apply the law to. Likewise, the word grooming is highly contextual, because am I grooming my dog? Am I grooming my hair? Right? Am I preening? Right? That's the same. It's the same thing. And then contextually, we've applied that concept of grooming into the field of pedophilia and the trans movement and the other things, what they're doing to indoctrinate or convince or recruit children into this ideology by using these physical and medical methods.
Yes, so just to quickly stop you there for 1 second, I am separating pedophilia from transgender ideology. Yeah, completely separate.
Yeah, right. But I'm not gonna, and you are correct to do so. I'm looking at the grooming as a,
because that's what I'm being accused of. I'm being accused of calling the plaintiff a pedophile, essentially, right? And I'm not doing that. So
yeah,
and that's clear.
No, that's good. That's good. This is for you to clear the air on these things. And part of this is just me sharing how I'm experiencing this and what I think about it in historical or in linguistic context. it's much more difficult to take a concept into court because it's so contextual. But in a civic court, you're going to end up in the public eye, right? And the mob doesn't have the same granular definition and that approach. The reason I think they're taking you into the civic court is because they would lose in a criminal court. That's
Interesting.
my
Yeah,
thought.
I mean, gaining any sort of frontier totalitarians and authoritarians, the first thing they want to do is they want to suppress free speech. That's the first thing that goes in any society when they start going down the path of authoritarianism and totalitarianism. So, and free speech is the highest value needed to argue for all other values. It's the foundation of all other rights.
Yeah.
So free speech goes.
And they're taking, you're right. And then if in order to have that, as much uneducated influence shed onto that conversation, they will take it to civil court because it becomes public conversation. Right. So it intentionally taking it to the kangaroo court of public opinion. It's intentional.
Perhaps.
I would. I mean, if I wanted to shut down my enemies, I'd throw them out to the crowd, and I'd make sure the crowd was uneducated and hyped up.
Well,
Right.
that's
Well,
what Pilatus did with Christ.
Yeah.
It's the mob that condemned him, not the governor.
All right, Andre,
yeah,
you stepped in it,
yeah.
man. You gotta ask a question now.
No,
That's your punishment for cutting
okay.
off Tim.
I didn't want to cut Tim. I just wanted to add a little bit of spice in the conversation. Kathy, you mentioned something, many things that are important. The fact that the expression LGBTQ2S plus and all other letters makes me laugh, because this acronym, the T, for many years, it was for transsexual and not for transgenderism. So they cannot even define the actual expression. And the 2S, which is two-spirit, was invented a couple of years ago because they wanted to include the spirituality of Native people. So it's moving ground. I would say the lawyer who's bringing you with a civil case, they are weak in the sense that they always try to attack weak people. Evidently, you're not a weak person. You're fighting back. A civil case, and I will refer to 1989, there was a woman who had a relationship with a man. We talked about it last week in the episode about abortion. And she wanted to have an abortion because she was pregnant from this man. And they had to go, even they brought back the Supreme Court in summer to judge this case. A civil case can bring up, for example, if you would lose, can bring up Supreme Court judgment, and it would show that it is the system of the actual system of justice is biased. We cannot trust them. So I see, for example, I would not give a medical advice. There's a lot of people who do this on the internet. They say that, for example, ivermectin, or they will say, I did this, but it is not a medical advice because I'm not a doctor. If we suppress language, like you mentioned, we will go, or in my opinion, we're already there. We're already there. They are suppressing language since many years. It's just people don't pay attention to it. And your case brings the light on something that is there for decades now. The destruction of freedom of speech in the Western world. It is not uncommon now. How do you perceive the fact that those are people or minorities? You mentioned the word cult. They are attacking usually weak people. They attack in gang. They will attack you, but if you take them one by one and you have a debate, I'm sorry, sometimes my English is not that good, but but I would debate any of those people in French, for example, on so hard topics that they would have to back down. I think it's important to make sure that in a court of law, it's a battle, and lawyers are supposed to defend freedom or truth, which is not always the case, because we know some lawyers. How do you perceive the future of your battle? Because this is a battle. This is not a war. This is one battle. We are all at war.
Yeah,
and we are all warriors.
Right. Yeah, I don't want to speculate on the future of my case because I don't know. Everything's up in the air right now. But as far as being able to have a robust debate, obviously, if you are not able to debate your points, you're probably going to want to silence the other side. And so if you remove their language in order for them to be able to express themselves fully in a robust debate and have new ideas about what's going on and explore ideas, then you would remove their language. You'd remove their words that they're able to use to express themselves. Instead of asking, well, why are we using that word rumor, right? Why are we using, apparently there's more than one forbidden word. I'm not sure what the other ones are. But John Stuart Mills, he was born in 1806 and he died in 1873. He was a philosopher, and he basically tried to argue for the fact that if you deprive people of free speech, it's not just about depriving someone of the ability to express themselves, it's depriving people of the right to hear. And so free speech includes the right to hear. And if you deprive people of the right to hear, you deprive people of the ability to orientate their own position. How can we orientate our own position if we don't hear everybody else's ideas and positions, whether they're right or wrong, whether if what they're saying is true or false? We have to be able to decide that for ourselves.
You're right. The distinction between those are very important. This is very important distinction. The differences between right and wrong, and truth and false. And people, they have the tendency to mix this thing. Me as a writer, for example, and I will refer to a lawyer, for example, in a court of law. If I'm a lawyer and I'm using the word grooming, and the judge tell me, I don't permit that. There's an objection, and the judge tells me, okay, you have to rephrase. I can rephrase and I can say, okay, grooming, quote unquote. You can play with language. Truth will go underground, but it will never be suppressed. That's why I say on short term, it can be a battle. On long term, it is a war. And we are at war with people who want to manipulate language. That's why I was referring to and you're right to bring John Stuart Mill, because he's saying exactly what we have to do. Let's hear everybody. Let's hear everybody. But facts are hard. Facts are hard. Natural law, we always have this debate with natural law. Facts are hard. Biological facts are hard. They will always come back. Those people, they're weak, in my opinion.
Yeah, Glinner, or Graham Linehan, he's the author of Father Ted. He calls them a paper tiger. All they can give is abuse and punishment and litigation, but they don't have a solid ground to stand on. So
of course they don't.
I think in the end, the truth will prevail, and I think the human spirit will persevere in all of us.
Exactly, and I will just end on this as a simple observation: the fact that we, when I say they're weak, they have no solid ground. Okay, Canada can rule this in a way, but internationally, that will be another game. I'm not even talking about the United Nations or the International Court of Justice. It's something that can be much more complicated than what they think, and most of them, I think, They are short sight mind. They don't know what they're talking about. It will come out. It is already coming out. A couple of years ago, when the transgender ideology arrived, nobody was talking. Everybody was afraid. Today, they're coming out. They're coming out strong and saying, wait a second, we will bring fact. Only facts will matter.
Well, and I think that's one of the reasons why groomer, using the word groomer to explain people being groomed into transgender ideology, which I think can happen to adults as well. It's
Exactly.
not just children that can be groomed, and I think that society can be groomed at large. I think we were all groomed with this language, like gender affirming care instead of medical malpractice scandal that violates the Hippocratic Oath, or trans women instead of trans identified male or trans identified man. You know, what is it? Assigned at birth instead of observed at birth. This newspeak, this Orwellian newspeak, this is grooming us all as a society to have new expectations and beliefs and be desensitized to what's happening. And so I'm applying grooming, the word, into a new context that didn't exist before. Right? So this is why I'm using this word, and I don't think people should be afraid to use it. I think it should be part of the discussion and the debate, if we want a truly robust discussion and debate around this issue, because I think it's a very, very important issue. I think it is the worst medical malpractice scandal in human history.
We have to be able to use this language. You're right. Payment, it's up to you.
All right, I guess I'm up with now I got to come up with a question. Let's see, who do we got? Sundown 95. Thank you very much for reposting the stream. Mr. Chris Enns, thank you as well. If everybody else could please like, share, subscribe, and repost this live stream, we'd appreciate it. I want to share my view, and you tell me if this is how you see it, or if you think I'm wrong. This isn't just a free speech issue, like a little kid in kindergarten calling somebody else a poop face. You know, it's not just the words. To me, this is about expression. Like, this is somebody's beating up my little sister, and I say, hey, stop beating her up. You're a bully. And they come to me and they say, you can't use that word. It's not about the word. It's by they're removing my ability to express myself. Like, tell me if you agree with me or not, or do you understand what I'm saying?
Sort of. Yeah.
I feel like what they're trying to say is they want to roll out grooming, and they're like, we can't roll it out if the word grooming exists, so we have to make it so people can't. If you remove the word for a crime and they commit a crime, like, what do you say? That's my
right.
point.
So if you're calling someone a bully, also I think you should have a right to let's say someone isn't a bully, but you believe they're a bully and you want to call them a bully, even if you're incorrect. I think you should still be able to use that word. You should be able to use descriptive words like that. But if, let's say, someone is bullying and they say you're not allowed to use the word bully, well, now they're creating a situation where you're muzzled and they can act with impunity.
Yes,
Right? And
that's what I'm saying.
And I don't think that anyone should use any sort of identity as a shield. You know, this intersectional hierarchy of oppression that the oppression Olympics that the DEI people subscribe to. You know, I'm a woman. Let's say I possibly have a Jewish ancestry or something. Let's say I try and figure out all the ways I can try and figure out. I've crossed off, you know, I'm disabled or whatever. Like, I'm not, but like anything that I could try and cross off. I'm a black midget, female, transsexual. If you use those in order to act with impunity, I think that is a miscarriage of the law as well, right? I don't think that anyone should be able to use an identity to say, hey, you're not allowed to call me a bully. You're not allowed to say this. You're not allowed to say that because I have this protected identity. That you shouldn't be able to use that. Like, if you want to say to me, you know, I'm a woman and you want to have the debate with me about abortion, you know, and you want to say, you know, if you get an abortion, I think you're a murderer. And I say, you can't call me that because I'm a woman. Well, you should have the right to say that if you want to. You should have a right to your own tongue. If we don't have free speech and free expression, we don't have free thought.
No, I agree, and it's beautifully put. And Granddaddy-O kind of also made a similar comment. If it's your honest opinion, it should be protected.
Well, I would argue with John Stuart Mills that even if it's not your honest opinion and you don't think, even if you're being misleading, even if it's not true, the audience has to discern that. How could we determine what someone's motivation is necessarily either? If we really want to get into the, like, of course, yes, if you have a genuinely held opinion or belief, yes, you should be able to speak that. However, if we want to really dive into the free speech absolutism, you should also be able to say something that you think is untrue in regards to, if I say, hey, Payman, this whole time I think you've been a bully. I don't really believe that, but I want to just call you a bully. I don't think you should be able to persecute me for that. In a free and open society, you would say, well, we'll let the audience decide. They all saw this too, right? So yes, but I agree that yes, political opinions is the highest protected speech in Canada.
Well, thanks. Good answer as usual. I just wanted to mention to the audience, if you have any questions, if you put them in there, I'm observing them, and if it's a valid question, if it's professional, we're going to ask it, put it to Ms. Drake at the end. Tim, do you have any?
Though, as far as saying things that are not true, I couldn't say something, for example, like, and this is where the line is drawn. Bruce Pardy talks about this. Bruce Pardy talks about how our speech can't infringe on the rights of others. This is like you have a very high threshold, a very high bar for this, which is actual defamation. So if someone says, let's say that so-and-so is convicted of a crime that they've never committed, and I say, this person is convicted of murder, and I put that out there, and that person's like, I've never even been charged or accused of it, let alone convicted. That is, you're claiming a fact. You're making a claim of a fact, not an opinion. And so that's where that threshold goes, where you can't say something that's false, that you're saying is someone committed a crime and was convicted of it. It has to have a very high threshold for defamation.
Yeah, it's always difficult to figure out where that threshold is. Tim, do you have any follow-up questions?
I think we're gonna have Kathy on more often because she knows what she's talking about. I'm getting this sense that you see this as a unique opportunity. That in spite of the very real, threat to your financial stability and growing international reputation, you see this as an opportunity to stand up and speak for those who may be too afraid to speak it themselves, or have become too accustomed to censoring themselves in the public. But what I feel is you've taken this by the horns. You're educated on it, you understand it, you have a good grip about it, and you have an approach that speaks from strength. And so we made a joke earlier about greatness being thrust upon you, and I think this is your window.
I'm so grateful for all the great people that are supporting me, and that are in my corner, and that are consulting with me. Yeah. This, courage begets courage. And so all of these incredibly courageous people are counseling me. And there's a huge network of people that are mobilizing more and more. We're getting more and more tight knit, and we're talking to each other, and they inspire me, and they're the ones who uplift me so that I can be as courageous as possible in this process. People like Payman and yourselves.
So are you seeing something? So you're familiar with what's been going on since 2015 with Trudeau Jr. and all that other nonsense, and how this has been creeping forward like a rot into our culture. do you find yourself at as a center of a new storm or a new resistance? Is that the way you're approaching this?
This is a
So
new
then-
frontier. Yeah, this lawfare. It's a new frontier in totalitarianism and authoritarianism. And I'm on the front lines of it. But in society, in history, human history, we gained Enlightenment values. Prior to that, it was barbarianism and, constant, you could just torture people. You could have the Star Chamber, where the kings would bring people into a kangaroo court, and we're getting our kangaroo courts back with the human rights tribunals where you don't have to face your accuser and those sorts of things that go against natural justice. But gaining Enlightenment values in the first place was incredible for humanity. And it seems as though we keep going through cycles. It has to constantly be reasserted. That torch has to keep being passed on. And so the psychopaths, the sociopaths, the Machiavellians, the authoritarians, the tyrants, the petty tyrants, because they're always petty, are continually going to try and wrestle control. And so that's why we have to be courageous. This is not like a battle that's won and then you never have to go back to it ever again. Right. Throughout history, we're going to continually have to wrestle with this and ensure that we maintain freedom. And that's why I love the USA so much, is because they do at least have the First Amendment. And I think they're doing a good job of standing up for freedom as best they can.
It's an interesting comparison because Canada, and we've talked about this ourselves on the show in times past, Canada and Canadians have a rather loyalist approach to culture, particularly, to the crown. And this is a hereditary behavior that we've carried through. Whereas the uniqueness of America, even though they're a neighbor, they have a revolutionary culture, right? And so that culture is always aware that they're one generation away from, right, totalitarian. So every generation is encouraged by the generation previous, stand on your guard, withhold your right, hold the hill. Whereas Canada is more like, well, we kind of need to be respectful, and I'm sorry, and right, can I hold the door for you? And until, in our effort to be kind, we lose whatever our grandfathers have fought for in the first place. I find it very interesting that it's in our desire to be not like America. It's America's attitude for self-preservation and standing up for individual rights that we will end up leaning on to bring us back to a center to recover.
Yeah, I mean, it might get to the point. It might get to the point that Canadians have to claim asylum in the USA. Jordan Peterson left. Gad Saad left. It's not looking great, but like I said, I'd like to be an optimist.
I'm encouraged that it's, and I don't mean this in a derogatory fashion, I'm encouraged that it's the commoner who is sparked to fight back, as opposed to the upper middle class, or our paid electorate, right, or our front line. That it's actual regular run-of-the-mill citizens who are saying, "You've crossed the line, you shall not pass." So it's very encouraging when people like yourself stand up.
No passerán.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, Andre.
Well, if I can add to the list, payment left too.
Because I'll come back. Yeah. Well, and Canada's still there when the visa expires.
Well, no, I have a couple of observations. Tim was mentioning the loyalty of people, Canadian to the crown. I would say, which crown? Because I'm French Canadian. So I could say, am I loyal to the crown, the British crown, or the French monarchy? This is it could be interesting. The other thing I want to mention is that today or yesterday, the Canadian Conference for Catholic Bishops wrote a letter to Mark Carney on about Bill C-9. And in this letter, they're referring to the fact that they want to criminalize some passage of the Bible. And somebody made a comment very interesting. He said, okay, you're in a court of law and they ask you to swear on the Bible. And you will say, but which part? Because you will weaponize or you will criminalize some part of the Bible. The idea is that you try to suppress history, you try to suppress language, and that's why I say your situation actually, Kathy, is a battle, and you're not alone. You have a lot of allies. Many people are not standing up, but we saw a precedent in 2021 with the Freedom Convoy. Some people woke up. Sometimes I have debate and discussion with my wife, and she says, "Oh, it will not happen in Canada." I said, "You need only 15% of the population who will stand up," and that's what the power is afraid of. And I think Tim mentioned something very important. The crown is too weak and too coward to try to pass something or to crush an individual. So they use minorities in the civil case that are weaponized. Those people they're not really intelligent. They cannot debate. And I'm very happy that you're here, because you debate on fact. First of all, you debate on history. You quoted John Stuart Mill. You're quoting, aspect of the Enlightenment that are very important. And the fact that it's a perpetual battle. Just keep up the good work, and you're not alone. You have a lot of allies on the barricade.
Well, arguably, I mean, there's benefits to the loyalist, history as well. I mean, we have the Sons and Daughters of Liberty in the USA, and I love that history. I've been to Boston. I've thrown the fake tea off of the boats and those sorts of things, and I love that history. And half of my ancestors were Americans. My dad's side, they both had their American passports. But I also have, a great grandfather who served for the Canadian military and survived mustard gas in World War I, along with his brother and his father. I have another ancestor who was a Royal Guard, and I've made my oath to the Queen in the past. And, the sovereign, the royal crown, should be there as a check and balance to uphold Magna Carta, which is Magna Carta is the foundation that inspired the Constitution of America, right? So hopefully, if things were to go too haywire, the sovereign would no longer just be a symbolic figurehead, but King Charles III would actually step in and say, "Enough. You need free speech."
Well,
I would hope that, right? Hey, King Charles, if you're listening. Help.
Good. You can ask him.
I'm loyal.
Sometimes
I'm loyal, and I love Camilla.
Loyal,
I don't mind Camilla at all.
Being loyal is one thing, and you can say, for example, "Sir, you're nude. The king is nude." I gave an example. Beau Brummel with George was a friend of the king. Beau Brummel was a young man, very handsome. And he was always in private. He was calling the king not "Sir" or "Your Honest." He was calling the king George. And one day they were in a room, and there was an ambassador that was there. And Beau Brummel said to the king, he said, "George, ring the bell for the servant to come and bring the tea." And after that, you did not see Beau Brummel anymore in the court, because he was in front of an ambassador. He should have known that in front of the king, when you're alone with him, you can call him George or Tim, because Tim is king of BC. But at the time, he forgot. And after that, he disappeared from the court. So there's a protocol of to respect. And I think in the British Crown, they are very attached to the protocol, and maybe they would play on this. Minorities who are weaponized and they are not aware of history will make mistakes. Like I said before, vocabulary manipulation, trying to suppress free speech with weak arguments. And I think it's important to emphasize that we are strong together when we have, and you're right, when I was quoting either Voltaire or John Stuart Mill, when you quote John Stuart Mill, I think it's very important that we're able to express ourselves. If somebody tells me that I have to censor myself to express the word civilization in my novel, I will make it as a duty to use it, because it's important that you break this, I would say, this straitjacket that they want to impose us, especially towards free speech. You're right. The first freedom that we have is the freedom of expression. That's the first one. Everything after that is it depends on that. So I think it's important, and your statement now shows that you're a strong person, and I'm happy because we saw this in 2021. We see it more and more often. You have more allies than what you think.
Thank you so much.
Payment, it's your turn.
Well, let's like, share, subscribe. Please restream. It would help. But let's go to the audience questions. Do you have 5 minutes, Kathy? Let's see. AHS refugee. Thank you very much. He or she says, "Good show. Thanks. Glad you enjoyed it." Granddaddy-O, he makes a comment. A normal judge with any common sense wouldn't even hear the case. It would be summarily dismissed. We have an ideologically captured judiciary, though. In your opinion, this is just, first of all, if you don't want to answer it, you don't have to answer it because it's a legal issue. You might get into trouble. But in your opinion, if you can, is this correct, where this is a matter of activist judges, or is this the system behaving how it should?
So my understanding is that the Trudeau government put in like 800 judges. So there is an issue with the courts being ideologically captured. I think that's there, but we don't know yet if this will be dismissed or not. We're still in that process. So we'll find out, and there'll be more updates in the future. Stay tuned.
Yeah, tune in next week. I don't know, Tim, Andre, would you like to quickly add anything?
It's been, yes, you remarked 800 judges, and I've been using that phrase quite a lot to identify that the judicial branch has been usurped by the executive branch of the federal government, in which in 2023, the then Justice Minister bragged on Facebook and social media, that he had personally installed 700 judges across Canada in 2023. And my immediate thought on reading it was, you're the minister. I appreciate that you do have the authority to do this thing, but have you ever heard of delegation?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why he did this himself is he's copying Justin Trudeau, who that same year had given letters of mandate to individual like department heads and ministries and et cetera, and agencies and whatnot in underneath the Canadian government, and gave them individual letters of mandate and said, this is what you're going to do. This is how you're going to do it. And so
Wow.
what the justice, right? And so what the justice minister did, this is his own variation on that theme. He personally bragged about installing 700 judges across Canada.
So it was 700, not 800.
Well, but that's 2023.
I see. Because
Right?
I
right?
this is a steep learning curve. So
right.
fact check
No,
me on
and that's
everything
okay.
I say.
No, and I'm not saying you're wrong, because you're probably closer to the truth. I'm saying,
Yeah,
what
I don't
one
know.
man
I don't
said-
know.
right? Well, I'm saying what one man said for 1 year, and the
Right.
Liberals have been in power for 10 years. So who knows? But do I
Right.
think that the judiciary has been captured? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Andre?
It seems as though all institutions are currently captured. It feels like we're
Yes.
in 1939 or something.
Yeah.
Like,
yes,
and it's
if you want-
interesting too, is that if you look into and I'm agnostic. I'm not a religious person. I think that religions often cause a lot of hatred and division in the world, organized religion. But I respect the archetype of Jesus representing the truth, and how we crucify the truth. But in religious texts, it often states that evil portrays itself as good.
Mhm.
And so it's very interesting that everybody in history, whenever we were like, holy moly, that was crazy, that never should have happened, Nazi Germany or whatever, the Pol Pot regime, communist China, any of those things, the Holodomor, often those people were portraying themselves as the good guys. And the people who get involved with those movements think they're on the right side of history. They think they're the good side. And that if you go against it and you dissent, you're evil and you need to be crushed at all cost.
Yeah.
It's terrifying, actually.
Well, it is, but what you're doing is pushing back against that. And you're pushing back against it without pulling some kind of victim card. You're saying, nuh-uh. Right? I see what you're doing. You think you're right. You think your idea. You think this is the direction the country you should go, and you've chosen to pick on me, and that's a mistake because I will not step down, and I am educated on the subject, and I understand where I should stand, and I understand where culture should be. And you're pushing back, and a lot of people don't.
Right. I'm continuing to educate myself all the time. So if anyone's listening who feels like I should know something, please DM me. If you have any questions, instead of putting a comment with your question on any of my posts, please also just DM me. If I'm not following you, for you to DM me, you can write a message saying like, hey, could you give me a follow back? And I'll follow back. And then try and help me educate myself in this battle. That would be greatly appreciated.
And to add a little more to that, what you're experiencing, I've done some research and some in preparation for today's show on a more general aspect, because I'm very interested in what's happening in the Commonwealth, right? What happens in the UK, what happens in Canada under the the Commonwealth of Nations. And I'm finding that the struggle that you're beginning to experience here is already happening in the UK. It's already happening in Australia. It's already happening in New Zealand. Right? And like you say, it's trying to happen in the US, but first rights pushes back quite definitively. But in the Commonwealth nations, we do not have a free speech law. We don't. It exists to us passed down through common law, through the culture, based on the intent of the Magna Carta and based on the principle of I should be able to speak to the king. If I go through the right protocols, I should be able to get an audience. That's being suppressed because our elected nobility has seen fit to act as de facto leadership for the country. And so in other nations, the Five Eyes, which would include America as well, they are indeed pushing the public as a whole into the direction that you're seeing push against you. So you, among others across the Commonwealth, are test phases.
Yeah, if they can crush me, they want to make an example out of me.
Yeah.
I sometimes feel like if they could, people on that side of the political debate would have me executed if they could. They could, if they had that type of power, they would use it. That's what it feels like. They want me totally destroyed. People like Amy Ham as well, Frances Widdowson, all these brave souls. Mia Hughes. She's a huge inspiration, does fantastic work. Mia Hughes wrote the WPATH report. This is very important. Really important. Get out your notepad and write this down, folks. The WPATH report. Mia Hughes on X, she's Cry Mia River. And this WPATH report were internal communications from the World Professional Association of Transgender Health. And these internal communications that were found in a discovery process in a lawsuit, they say that vulnerable adults and children are not able to consent to what's going on, especially children. Children are not able to consent. They're not able to understand what they're consenting to. So check out Mia Hughes, her work. Check out GenSpec. GenSpec has all sorts of great information and podcasts on this topic. They go into some really deep dives. They have some incredible guests, speakers, authorities, whistleblowers. They had a Tavistock psychologist or psychiatrist recently, for example. And then if you're in Canada and you are a reality-based woman, please put in your application into COSBAR. COSBAR, I am now an associate of, and so is Amy Ham and many other incredibly courageous and brave women. And one of the rules, sorry, is that we don't tell people who are members of COSBAR, so I apologize for that, but I think that that is public information already. So I apologize for that, sorry. But yeah, so we are mobilizing. There's a whole bunch of people who are, I believe, on the right side of history. And I don't think in history ever have the good guys been the ones who are trying to silence others.
Andre, do you have any final words before we give a final word to Mr. Drake?
Well, Tim mentioned something, evil is an imitation of truth, true mirror. And he mentioned something about the judges, the 800 judges that were appointed, or the Chinese love of Justin Trudeau, Chinese, authoritarian regime. Let's not forget, Baron de Montesquieu wrote The Spirit of the Law, so the separation of power. And I think in Canada, we don't have it anymore. That's why we have to be cautious or suspicious. Suspicious in the sense that I don't trust nobody. I just don't trust nobody, and I question everything. That's the first thing when you're a critical thinker. It doesn't mean that you have only enemies, but you have to recognize your allies and false icons. Some people who will pretend that they defend the truth. You mentioned something very important. In psychology, the development of children is sacred, and you cannot deviate from that. All psychologists will agree with me. They will, well, at least if they are serious psychologists, they will understand the development of children is extremely important. If you don't do this, you will destroy their entire life. They will have trauma, and they will carry this trauma for the rest of their life. So, like you mentioned, grooming children, indoctrinating them, we see it's a heavy tendency. And I would advise people to go back and read The Spirit of Law of Baron de Montesquieu, because he's the separation of power, executive power, political power, judicial power. This is extremely important. The law or the ideas are there, but people are weak. We have to be able to be strong, and I hope that we can, in the future, work together. This is and I'm very happy that you're here.
Well, I think that puberty is a human right. If people want to talk about real rights out there, children have a right to grow up into a whole healthy body. And if you're blocking puberty and you're blocking their development, when their puberty is supposed to start, okay, I'm not talking about precocious puberty. That's a different issue, which they try and use this as an argument. But if you block puberty when it's supposed to start, you're blocking their regular development, which includes their brain development, right? So
exactly,
every child has a right to grow up into a whole healthy body and not have their development impeded upon. Puberty is a human right. We need to recognize that, and we need to start, everyone needs to start standing up. Courage begets courage. Cowardice begets cowardice. So as Mia Hughes says, we need a social contagion of courage.
I think that's actually good words to end on. But Mr. Drake, could you maybe tell the audience where they can go to learn more about you, and or actually more importantly, where to support you?
So I have a Give Send Go that was set up by Chanel Fall. That is on my pin post. My X account is at Nula Moonsnail, Nula Moonsnail. So that pin post, if you click on that fundraiser, it has a rundown of everything, including the legal documents. It also has my email address in there. I accept e-transfers as well if you feel like supporting my legal defense. And then I have also set up a buy me a coffee, just because some people find that more convenient. So Any support is greatly appreciated. I've currently spent $70,000 on filing my defense, and my legal bills are estimated to get into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So this is a big battle, a big fight, and so any support, big or small, including just likes and shares if you're not able to give, that's greatly appreciated. Thank you so much.
So to everyone that's watching right now, if you could go please follow Kathy on X, give her a comment, anything uplifting. You know, you could even say just thank her for what she's doing. If you can donate financially, that would also be extremely helpful. Follow her on X. She's going to be on Greg Wycliffe's podcast. Anywhere she goes on a podcast, try to watch it, share it. This is a very important fight. This challenge that she's found herself in. It's not just for her. She's not doing this for her own self-interest. She's doing this for all of us. Miss Drake, I would like to thank you very much for coming on. We're gonna hold you over until after the show, but I wish you the best of success, and I pray that this you come out of this with a win. So best of luck.
Thank
and
you.
Take care.
It's been a pleasure.
Bye.